Yes, Chronicles.
Hey, so I do have a question for you because a lot of people, I've been on a lot of lives and people talk about the difference between like slavery and indentured servitude. And I do agree that they're different, but can you like explain to me like the major difference between slavery and indentured servitude that makes, I guess, because I do understand like while when the person can buy his own freedom, right, in indentured servitude. Okay, so besides that, what makes indentured servitude better than slavery?
What made indentured servitude is better than slavery?
Yeah, what makes it better than slavery?
Have you did your research?
No, I know what indentured servitude is, and I've done my research on indentured servitude. I just want to ask you because a lot of people say that indentured servitude and slavery are not the same, and I agree with you. Besides being able to buy your freedom later on in life, like while that person is indentured to serve the person, what makes that any
Hmm.
better than
Who,
slavery?
who,
Oh,
who
I
bought
got
their
it.
freedom? Wait, hold up. Who bought their freedom?
Who bought what? Who bought the freedom? I said I know. I said that
Who bought
indentured.
their freedom?
No, I said indentured servitude and servants can buy their freedom at some point, and not all of them, but
Yeah.
some of them can, right? So
Hmm.
but while they're still indentured to serve, what
Yeah.
makes that any different than slavery?
I can. I can. I can.
Can
I
I
can.
answer,
I
host?
can
Right,
answer
because
that.
you know what? I'm gonna let Cosmic and then Laura. You go ahead because you know what?
So, I brought out. That's a good question because I brought up a actual contract from an actual indentured servant. You can go to Google and type in indentured servant contract and go to the images, and it'll actually pull up actual real documents. And if you actually read the documents in it, it states that the people who receive the indentured servants has to provide them food, clothing, shelter, and in some cases even monetary and monetary benefits.
Wait, I have
So
a
they
question.
basically almost got like health, like it's basically almost like what we do at work.
Wait, I
Like
have a
we
question.
work.
I have a question really
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
Cosmic, right? Are
Mhm.
all indentured servitude contracts the same?
No, but all of them no. I wouldn't, well, I don't know.
The,
I'm not gonna say I do know,
Wait,
but
hold up. What did you say? If
he said if
all what?
all indentured contracts, indentured servant contracts the same, like they all. I would assume they would be different
No,
in the
no, no, no,
time,
no. They were.
the,
in the time frame. Like the amount of time that they had to serve may be different. That's what I would say. They were not all the same.
the answer is actually no, right? Because there are different reasons why
Yeah.
people have to have are put into indentured servitude contracts. Like there's sometimes
Right.
when kids are put into indentured servitude contracts because their parents sold them into that in order to pay off debt, right? There's a whole bunch of different reasons why people are put into indentured servitude contracts for a whole bunch of different reasons. They're not all the same, by the way. I guess like when you make that argument, that's like no different than me making the argument, in my mind, that oh there were like some slaves had it easier than other slaves because they were in the house or something like that because not all slaves had the same experience. So I fail to see how one is better than the other when you had times
Okay,
Host,
when these
so
people were
what's the
literally.
difference?
I'm gonna answer you.
What's the wait, hold on, Laura, because I know you're gonna. I'm good. So what's the difference from enslaved and servitude?
No, what is the difference? Because one, you owe
You don't know
them.
what
No
the
You
one.
are
difference?
you
Besides the fact that you own
you
them.
are bound in the question, so you answer it. But I'm
Right.
gonna answer. I'm gonna answer this for you.
Go ahead.
And then, as a slave, we had no rights. We were not seen as humans. We were seen as property. We were seen as less than. Matter of fact, we was not seen as humans. So we could be beat, we could be tortured. I myself have 4 children. The thought that I would hold a pregnancy for 9 months, then when I give birth, someone can come and take one of my babies because I don't even own my own body nor anything that comes out of it. An indentured servant was nothing compared to a slave. And I think that when you come into black spaces and even have the nerve, the
Mm.
nerve the nerve to compare the
Right.
two and what our people went through,
Went
and
through.
it's nothing less,
Can I?
nothing
Can I?
less
And
than
I want to add to it. I want to
just
add to it.
a whole
So,
massacre.
so you do
And,
realize
and,
that,
and
wait, really quickly,
Go
you do
ahead.
realize that if your debt was large enough, you had to sell your kids
did
into
you just
indentured
hear what I
servitude, right?
said? You're not listening,
No, he
and
didn't.
I don't really
And he
think that
didn't.
you're listening
Laura,
to what we're
Laura, he
saying.
didn't hear because he doesn't
We
care.
were
He,
property.
he didn't listen. He
We
didn't
were
care because
property.
listen, because he don't care. Because
He
if
don't.
he doesn't care because all he care about the Irish. But if that's the case, then why would they make an emancipation for us and not the Irish?
Right. Why would there be laws for the indentured servants? Chronicle answered that. Why didn't they make laws to say, no, you can't just, when you see a black person out in the street, no, you can't just take him and hang him on a tree.
Can I add
Wait,
to
are you
what
saying
you
that
were
there
saying
were?
about treatment? What are you saying? Oh, right. Can I add to what you were saying about treatments and rights? So it says, while both indentured servants and slaves face challenging conditions, treatment of indentured servants varied depending on their individual masters. Some masters were relatively fair and fulfilled their obligations, while others subjected their servants to harsh treatment and exploitation. Slaves, on the other hand, had no legal rights or protections and were considered property of their owners who had complete control over their lives.
Wait, Cosmic, I have a
Period.
question.
They actually had, yes.
Cosmic, because you said something that's very interesting, right? You said that the treatment of indentured servants varied depending on their masters, right? But
Right.
slaves, they had no rights, right? Because you said that was very interesting. Let me ask you a question really quickly. Do
Right.
you think that the treatment of slaves varied depending on their masters as well?
Oh, they most certainly did. We know this to be true.
Okay.
Okay,
However,
cool.
I'm sorry,
oh,
Cosmic.
wait, Laura.
I am so sorry.
Wait, Laura.
I,
Wait.
please. Because Chronicle, you're not listening, and I think this is so
No, no, I am listening because I just had
disingenuous
a
for you
positive conversation with him.
to still compare. There's not a comparison, hun. There's
But there
not a
is a comparison.
comparison.
We just compared
But
the
No, there's
treatment of
not.
people by
No,
their
there's not.
masters. That's
He
literally
doesn't want
It's
to.
comparison.
not,
But you
and he
know
don't care.
Lori,
but
this is the crazy part. Because when the indentured servants received their freedom after they served their time, the Irish, they became slave owners.
Right. And not only that, there was a family in Georgia. They were black, and it was
We're not gaining
1995.
nothing on him.
They did not tell, and this was generations of this family. 1995 in Georgia, they found out that slavery was not a thing since the 1865, and it was 1995. The people that had them at their house working were are in jail, are in prison right now. So, Chronicle, it's not about the comparison. It's not about who was treated better. It's not about that. It's about they took humans and they would feed our children to crocodiles as
And
as if
period.
it was
And
a
period.
tennis game. As
And
if
and
it was
period.
a tennis game.
and it even says it's
They
important to
would
note
take
that
out
these
black men and dehumanize them.
it's important to note that these differences represent generalizations and that there were variations in treatment and experiences of indentured servants and slaves across different regions and time periods. However, the fundamental distinction lies in the voluntarily contractual nature of indentured servitude versus the involuntary and hereditary nature of slavery.
But that's kind
Indentured
of weird.
servitude are
That's kind of
usually
weird to me.
contractual.
But because you said contractual obligation, right? Because I did try to bring this up
Yes.
earlier, right? If your,
Yes.
I guess, debt was large enough, you actually pass that debt on to
Yes.
your kids. So when you had kids, they would take your kids from you, right? And they would also turn them into indentured servitude, into indentured service until they paid off the debt.
Right.
And then
Right. But
they would
that was
have
the
high
contract that
interest
they
accrue on that debt, so they couldn't pay off
But
the debt.
Chronicle, that was a contract that they entered into.
Their
Whether
kids
it
entered
be
into it.
that
They
they
volunteered
no,
into.
their parents.
Our
So your
people
parents.
didn't
So your
volunteer.
parents entered into a
We was
contract. So check this
stacked.
out. Your parents enter into a contract and they say, "Hey, I will have to pay off my debt." But the contract also says, "Let it be known in small print that if you die in your contract, then your children will have to take on that debt and continue it until it's done." That's how it was in the contract.
But you
They
do realize those
knowingly
contracts were
knew.
very exploitative, right? They would have high interest rates,
Of
and some of those
course,
could not
of
be
We
paid
didn't
off.
course.
have
But they
contracts.
had the choice. They had the
Chronicle. We did
choice.
not have contracts.
Wait, the
Right.
We
They
parents
didn't
didn't
had
have
the
say,
choice. The
"Hey,
kids did not.
at the
Hold up,
end of
y'all.
this
Hold up.
year."
Everybody. Indentures are agreements between two parties about long-term work. Let
Yeah.
me read this again. Indentures are agreements between two parties about long-term work.
Okay.
Let me go to let me go to slavery.
Like,
People, and I seen
Hold up,
that
hold up,
story.
hold up. The state of being a slave. Thousands has been sold in slavery. The practice of the practice or system of owning slaves.
no.
You hear the difference? Owning.
Yeah, one is involuntary, one is voluntarily.
but it
You can
isn't
Google
voluntary
it
if
all
it's intergenerational. You do realize, right?
Oh my God,
because
you
it
are
was
Who is?
being you are being disingenuous.
because it was like it's like your school loans,
Because
right?
I just read indenture and I said two parties make an agreement and
Right.
another one is being owned and you're gonna say something else.
Right.
Those two, the ones who received their freedom, who made an agreement because they made an agreement because they wanted to come over from Ireland to receive freedom, and they made an agreement to come over here to come in America, and they did it, and they became slave owners. You can't say they didn't because nobody didn't know they're Irish until they spoke, and they was the worst people of all because they treated our people wrong too. So at the end of the day, you're still trying to defend them and you're ignoring my two panel people and you want to be disingenuous and then you want to try to compare slavery when slavery was they was owned and they was chatteled. Once our people had babies, and I said it. A 9-year-old child will start menstrual cycle and they will get the biggest buck and they will take her into the barn and watch them have intercourse with her and then hopefully she get pregnant and then her child will get sold off. That didn't happen to the indentured servants. But then you still ignore
Wait,
my
their
two
child did
panel
get sold off, though.
members. You still
Their childs
No.
did get sold off. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
did they
But they entered
did wait
freely in the contract. They entered.
hold on.
Wait,
Hold
whether or
up.
not your parents entered
Did
into a
they
contract or not, your
get
child got
the
sold off. So
biggest
what's the
buck?
point?
Did they get the biggest buck and take them into a barn?
So you're saying the difference is
Did
the
they?
barn?
You're gonna answer yes or no. Did they get the biggest buck and take that child into the barn so they can have intercourse with that child?
Like, I don't know.
Get
Probably
off
not.
my
Like,
panel.
shoot. Probably
Get
not.
off
Like,
my panel.
what's? But they're still
Like
treated
shoot.
Get off
terribly.
my
Like,
panel. Get
Wait,
off
wait,
my panel.
Chronicle. I hear. Okay.
Get off my panel.
I, I,
Get
I,
off my panel. Cause
no,
you're not gonna do it.